All right, everybody, welcome back. It's Mosh and Brodes, episode 5. Hope everyone's getting ready for the holidays the way we are, which is by absolutely procrastinating. Speaking of procrastinating, Hunter Brody, it's a pretty good segue into this Eagles quarterback situation because I certainly thought that we were going to see a quarterback change a little bit sooner than the second half of the Packers game. I thought it might happen the week before. It didn't. Then it happened against the Packers, and now we know the Eagles have a new starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. And there's a lot we want to get at here. We want to peel back the layers of the onion. I know you have some things on Doug Peterson that are on your mind, but before I even get into Doug Peterson, I keep hearing this whole I don't want to call it a narrative. People always say narrative, right? There's this wow, aren't you really glad that the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round now? Because look at what happened to Carson Wentz, and where would they be without him? And I'm not there yet. I'm not gonna say I'm a big believer. You don't make a mistake to cover up a past mistake or this or that. And I still don't think the pick in itself was a good idea. And people are saying this as if Hurts has already come in and won 3 games. Imagine if he loses his first 2 games. Everybody's gonna not only hate Jalen Hurts after that, but then they're going to still go back and say that pick was a lousy pick. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I certainly don't think that anything right now about this season has been validated by a quarterback change.
I agree with you. I can't look at what happened in that draft room and at the time of the draft and say, well, now it's justifiable for what they did. It still doesn't make sense because they just paid the quarterback. So if Jalen Hurts does work out and he is the franchise, you still made a huge mistake in that contract to Carson Wentz. So it doesn't mean that you are now off the hook. No matter what they do from this point moving forward, they failed miserably. They either wasted a second-round pick in Jalen Hurts or they screwed up with this big-time money contract. Now, I saw John Clark of NBC Sports Philadelphia tweet out Howie Roseman's reaction on draft night. And he was talking about how, they messed up in the past. Russell Wilson, they don't want to make that mistake again. Well,
I talk about that.
Yeah, the more and more I think about that, you would never, because we all question, what was the game plan with this guy? If you felt you didn't want to pass up on, quote, Russell Wilson again, that tells me that you don't draft Russell Wilson to sit on your bench. So their philosophy had to have been, this kid's going to play at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think play, yes. I think when Howie said that, and look, I'm just giving you my own interpretation. I don't think he was saying apples to apples where he felt that Jalen Hurts was going to be their Russell Wilson. I think he was making the point that we really liked a player in 2012 that we thought we were going to get. We waited. We lost out on him. We really like this player for a different reason. And the reason is we now value backup quarterbacks more, which they went into, and we didn't want to miss out on that player. So we drafted him where we drafted him. But as you just said, and as I think I said on last show, not a big fan of making a mistake to correct a mistake. Lord only knows where Jalen Hurts really was on their board and where they picked him. I don't know that, but the way they even described it almost made you feel like they knew they were reaching, but there was some kind of valid reason for reaching. As I've told you 1,000 times, around the league, when I talk to different people around the league and ask where they had Jalen Hurts rated, they said somewhere in the late 3rd, early 4th round, which, that's fine. I have nothing against the kid. I think the world of the kid for what he went through at Alabama and then Oklahoma. So I hope nothing I say about this situation is interpreted as some type of slight or diss on Jalen Hurts. I root for him, and I hope he does well going forward just because he seems like a good kid. But in general, I just think the whole philosophy was flawed. The process that they went about was flawed, and nothing is a compensator right now. And I'll say this, if he plays really well, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but if he plays really well, it almost kind of adds to the conundrum they've got, because you're right. Carson Wentz is going to be on the team next year. There are some ways around that and trading him, but I'm going to say that I don't believe, because now I'm hearing this kind of revisionist history. In my heart of hearts, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, they did not draft Jalen Hurts thinking he was going to be the starting quarterback this year or even next year, and maybe not the year after. I don't believe they drafted him because last year Carson Wentz had a little bit of a midseason funk. because he certainly had a very good December and they made the playoffs.
I would agree with you. I don't think for the short term they might have envisioned it, but something tells me, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, but something tells me that maybe towards the end of this Carson Wentz extension that they gave him, maybe they thought that would be the time Jalen Hurts would take over. I do feel at some point, maybe not this year, I definitely think they're surprised on when this is all happening, but it did seem at some point they did see this kid being the quarterback. Otherwise, why would you draft him? And I think that's why we had the confusion that we did at the time. What was going on in their brains? And
you're rationalizing. Yeah, you're applying a logical thought. Like there's no way you would really draft a backup quarterback in the second round unless you really, really thought he was going to be your starter. You're just not telling everybody that. And I say to that, Hunter, no, you're giving them too much credit. They told you. They said it, right? Because it's not a very popular opinion, and they said it anyway, which to me means they're telling the truth. They said, we value the backup quarterback so much. Look at our history. Look how much we've had to pay for backup quarterbacks. Now we have one cost controlled. That's our new thing. They love to be on the forefront of things, man. They rub that in people's faces. So what you're doing is almost letting them off the hook.
I definitely don't want to do that. I promise you. That's why I'm a little torn because, like you, I'm rooting for Jalen Hurts. I feel like there's this split, this divide. It's either you can root for Carson and you support him, or you want him gone and you think he stinks and you think he's horrendous. There's no in between. Well, this is why I'm torn, because the franchise put themselves in this situation. So I want them to feel the pain. I really do. I want them to suffer as a franchise because they did this. They did this to themselves. At the same time, I want Jalen Hurts to succeed because he didn't put himself in this situation. I guarantee it. If you ask Jalen Hurts, how would you want your NFL experience to go? It probably would not be this one.
I feel like you're like you want this to be like Chaz Palminteri in the Bronx Tale when the biker gang comes in
sure,
and they're in
absolutely.
the bar and they're causing problems and they lock them all in and they beat the snot out of them, and at the end he's like, "Look at me. I did this to you," right?
Yeah,
you want Howie. Look what you did, Howie. You want Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz to be like, "We did this to you." Which
absolutely
is funny because it feels like we're headed in that direction. And Carson would definitely be the guy. Look what you did to me. But
it's unbelievable. It is.
It is. It's just hard to believe. I mean, I've covered the Eagles for a long time, and there are a lot of times I have felt myself saying, how come I just don't see other franchises having to go through this, And it's weird because they've been, for the most part, a successful franchise. If you look at maybe playoff berths per year, I mean, they're usually in the playoffs. They do have these down years, though, where things seem to bottom out. And I'll say, like, if you take some of the better franchises in football, the Steelers, the Ravens, I'm talking about historically, right? The Seahawks certainly have been. The Chiefs have been since Andy got there, so that's almost 6 or 7 years now. And the Patriots, of course, I'm sure each one of those franchises, maybe not the Patriots yet, have had their version of rock bottom at some point. Like the Steelers last year, Antonio Brown's a mess and Le'Veon Bell holds out, that, and then they come back and Roethlisberger gets hurt and they're down to like Duck Hodges, right, as their third string quarterback. And my God, they finished 8-8. You know what I'm saying? But I'm sure for that year that was turmoil. And
they wanted Tomlin fired. All those fans,
yes.
We want Tomlin fired. It's like you're on quarterback 4 and you're 500.
But when the Eagles bottom out, it's like they got a bottom the out. It's like everything has to hit the fan. Everybody's got to get fired, cleaning house. And that's just kind of what separates them, I think, from being one of those franchises that, when things get bad, there's turmoil. There's always turmoil. And some of those other franchises don't have that. They just have some bad years and then they quickly pick up the next year or two.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's some things that Doug said today in the press conference that irked me. And some of them I feel like it's a microcosm of what's happening internally in this organization in the front office. So how about this? I got a couple things. I have some takeaways. I even wrote down some notes, Mosh. I got some takeaways. So
Counselor came with an argument prepared.
Absolutely. So what I think is good is maybe I'll spitball my takeaways and we can kind of react. So I added one. I added a late one here. So I'll start with this, even though it's not where I wanted to start, but it's fresh. Okay. Fletcher Cox went on Twitter and there was this thing going around where if you want Jalen Hurts, you retweet it. If you want Carson Wentz, you favorite it. And he favored it. And he was up talking to the media, and he said, yeah, that was my tweet. I favored the tweet of Carson Wentz. So that's the way he wanted to go. He said Carson Wentz is my best friend on the team. I'm thinking, whoa, hold on a second. I never even heard anyone say that about Carson Wentz. But it tells me that, I don't think this front office realized. Everyone talks about Carson's psyche and what does this mean for him looking over his shoulder, which I think does add some context to the conversation. I don't think they thought about the locker room stuff, as if when you walk into the locker room, let's say it's 75% believe in Carson entering the season, 25% look at Jalen Hurts. They didn't think about the actual teammate side of things, where when you walk into the locker room, you have part of your team already from the jump looking at your quarterback in a different way. And I tied it together with what I saw out of Tom Brady. And I'm not saying Tom Brady and Carson Wentz are on the same level at all, but when he had Jimmy G behind him, he hated it. And this is the best to ever do it. And he was not satisfied at all. So I just look at Fletcher Cox's tweet. I look at what happened with Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady. And I look at the front office, and they don't get it from that aspect. And that blows my mind.
Yeah, no, I think that's a point that I never really considered. I mean, of course I considered the idea of they took a quarterback and what kind of impact would that have on Carson Wentz, but I didn't really think about it until you say that, about how the players around Carson Wentz themselves feel about it. The guys independent of Wentz and Jalen Hurts, and maybe a disconnect between the front office moves and how the players feel inside. And to take it further, it's not really just Jimmy Garoppolo and Brady is a good example, but that's how Aaron Rodgers felt when that's how Brett Favre felt when Rodgers was drafted. It's certainly how Rodgers felt when they drafted that kid out of Utah State this year, because he was pretty open about, like, what, you didn't get me a wide receiver? Like, what's going on here? Although they seem to be doing just fine. Montana had the same issue with Steve Young, and obviously Montana eventually got shipped. Now, none of them bottomed out, none of those examples. But I think where you might be onto something is that players are human beings, right? And a lot of the times when they're thinking about what's going wrong, they're probably thinking about the same things that you and I are thinking about fans, media, and all that. And they're looking around, right? And they're saying, well, you use a second round pick on a quarterback. All right. So maybe that wasn't the best for Carson's psyche. But on top of that, how about you could have taken an XY, a safety, a linebacker, another wide receiver, somebody else who could have helped this team. And then how about, you could have, from a Doug Peterson standpoint, how about you could have designed your offense a little bit differently when things were going south to alleviate the pressure on the quarterback. And I think they just start to put all these things together, and it makes them, I don't want to say bitter, but maybe angry and resentful of you're right, about how the team went about it. And you're bringing up Fletcher Cox. If I'm not mistaken, Jason Kelsey also had a press conference, and he said that what's gone on this year has been a total team meltdown, not just Carson. And I think he said coaching.
Yes, he did.
And front office. I don't know if he said front office, but I think maybe he said management or something like that. But the point is, that's rare. It's rare that you have people coming out and saying that coaching is an issue, even though he put it in the context of it's everybody. He did say coaching, and it's rare that you have guys, speaking the way Fletcher did, because that can be interpreted as anti Jalen Hurts. It's not. He's just defending Carson Wentz. But I think you make a really good point, and it's really them, the Eagles themselves, doing exactly what we're doing, and that's taking that piece of pie and cutting it up and serving the blame to everybody who's been involved, because there's certainly more than one. Carson gets the brunt of it. Doug owns it. Howie's got to own it. Jeffrey Lurie's got to own it. The coaches have to own it, and the players have to own it. And I think you make a really good point that they're at least expressive about it, and you don't always see that.
Yeah, Jason Kelsey's message was definitely strong. When he said coaches, my eyebrow was raised up a bit, like, all right, he's even going there. Now, he's a player who can do that. Could you imagine Avonte Maddox trying to pull a fast one to the media going there? His ass would be right to the curb if he went with something like that. So,
yeah. Can I tell you a funny story along those
course.
lines? So this was years ago when the team had finally decided that they were going to move on from Asante Samuel. They had traded for Namdi and they traded for DRC, and it's training camp and it's still at Lehigh, right? And I think Asante was a little bit late reporting that, so he was not happy, right? So right before he meets for the media the first time, a guy who used to work for the PR team named Ryan Nissan, he's now like the head PR guy for the New York Rangers, right? He pulls Asante aside. I'm pretty sure it was Ryan. And you see them having a talk. And what the PR people like to do is coach up the players, saying, you're going to be asked this, you're going to be asked that. You know, they try to like lead them to make sure that they say some things that aren't going to make the organization look bad, right? And so we're all watching this guy talk to Asante Samuel and go through it, and Asante's nodding like he understands what he's saying. Then Asante walks up to the pack of media, and someone says, well, Asante, how do you feel about Namdi and DRC being here and your role being vague? And he goes, man, if this front office thinks it's playing fantasy football and they want to trade me, they don't want my interceptions, they don't want my my playmaking skills, that's on. I mean, he totally went and ripped the organization. Like, he literally got through with the PR guy, came to the huddled media and just totally ripped the franchise to shreds. And you could see the PR guy just like, I thought we just had a conversation about all this. Asante was not playing any games.
That's funny.
So it kind of reminds me. It reminds you, when players get mad, they're going to speak out.
Well, Doug probably took a note out of his book, because every time his PR team talks to him and he goes up to the media, there's no way that's what they informed him to say, because he's a nightmare. You mentioned
he doesn't he loses the press conference, doesn't he?
Every time. See, for me to be this baffled after a press conference, knowing how dysfunctional it is, that just shows you how I walked away from what I heard. So you mentioned before about the plays and helping Carson, and I know that there's this theory out there that they're trying to sabotage him. I don't think it's to the degree of, trying to sabotage him, but I could see why people feel that way, and the reason and the way that it's even not ridiculous. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. The fact that it's actually possible to explain it in a way where it makes sense that it's being sabotaged, that scares me the most. So he talked about, and your tweet went all over the place because you tweeted out the quote that Doug Peterson said. In order to get Jalen's success, you got to attempt and try to establish a little bit of the run game, and he could be a part of that. He mentioned easy completions, quick game screens. Why is it taking Jalen Hurts being in the game for you to realize you can help out your quarterback in certain situations?
All right, so there's a number of ways to go about this. And trust me, your frustration that you're from reading that, I mean, when I tweeted that quote out, I literally had, for the first time ever, not death threats to me, but I think death threats to Doug Peterson that were coming through my Twitter feed, and I was getting nervous. First of all, you have to do this, right? You have to either believe it's a credible statement or not. Doug Peterson says, I've got to establish the run to help him out and get the quick game going. He has said that many times throughout the year, to be fair, about Carson, and has not necessarily come through, correct?
Yes.
So why do you believe that he's really going to do it for Jalen Hurts? Now, the problem is he just put everybody in this boat where they now don't want him to do it for Jalen Hurts, even though it's the right thing to do, because then it's like patently unfair that he did it for Hurts instead of Carson Wentz. He just put himself in a lose-lose situation, because if he does it, people are going to say, you didn't do it for Carson. If he doesn't do it, you can say, why aren't you doing it?
And package that together with him talking about less playing time for Alshon and Jason Peters. It all adds up to this theory that they are trying to make Carson Wentz fail and have others look better. Now, do I think they are intentionally doing this? No, I don't. But I could see why people do. It's such a bad look that, now you're going to move on from Jason Peters. Now Fulgham's going to get more snaps. Now you're going to run the football more. And you're right. You'll probably start the game off with 5 runs and then see 3 more total for the rest of the game after that. So is he going to stay true to what he's saying? I don't know, but something tells me that knowing Jalen Hurts is getting thrown into the fire, and not really just the fire, but the Saints, who have a lethal defense, I think he is going to put him in positions to help him succeed, and that's all I've been crying for when it came to Carson. Carson has been brutal, but just put him, he's limited right now, but put him in spots that he succeeds more than these bad spots where he's in the pocket getting crushed.
But what would be your takeaway from Jalen Hurts moving the ball better? I don't expect him to win. Maybe he wins a game or two along the way. I don't know. We'll see. But let's just hypothetically say the offense moves a lot more fluidly. Maybe they're not scoring 30 points, but at this point, 24 would be nice. Or, sustained drives
6 at
with no
halftime
turnovers.
would be better.
Right, exactly. What would you make of that? Because I can't, as much as we've criticized Doug, I would think that if Jalen Hurts is providing a spark in somewhere, and then you do see some of that short game executed and stuff that Doug's talking about, to me, there has to be a little bit of an indication in there that for the second time here, Doug's got a different quarterback in who's more willing to run the plays that Doug likes to draw up. RPOs were a big thing for Nick Foles, and they were a big thing for Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma. So I have a feeling they're going to be a big thing in the playbook going forward. And I think it shouldn't go unnoticed when Doug has talked this year about modifying the offense to try to do rollouts and other things that would get a quarterback like Carson on track. He would often tell you, well, we did have runs, but they got killed, or we did have some rollouts and they would get killed at the line of scrimmage. And I don't think he was trying to bury Carson Wentz. I think he's just trying to say about what happens in the moment of a game that causes certain things to change. But I also think that's his way of saying, guys, look, I'm calling certain things, but the quarterback has the autonomy because we've given him that, and he takes matters into his own hands, which we know Carson likes to do. He likes to be the Peyton Manning of the offense. So now that Doug has more of a piece of clay here at quarterback than he can mold, if you see Jalen Hurts do some things better and move the offense better, and it's faster and it's more rhythmic, I do think that that's not necessarily just an indictment on Doug, but an indictment on Carson and his coachability.
I definitely do think you're going to see the ball move better than what you've seen, because it can't get much uglier. So I really do. I think you're going to see the ball get moved more, and you're going to be intrigued by certain things. I think what you saw at the end might be what you see again. So there were some missed throws. There was an interception. There was a low throw. But then there were the throws to Jalen Reagor and the throw to Greg Ward. So I think it's going to be a combination of what you saw with running. He used his legs a lot. Maybe there might be a time where there's an open play. Maybe he looks at the first read and then reacts instantly to run because that's his instinct. He might miss a read or two because he's so like, hey, let me get out of the pocket and run. Maybe you see a little bit of that. But I think you will see the offense move better because Carson was playing that bad. And the way that I look at Doug's offense is, I think just from a large picture, Doug Peterson's offense is very vanilla, but it's average. It can win you football games, and you could be losing football games with that same offense. It's not horrendous, but it's not great either. It's just your average standard offense. Like, it's just basic what it is. Now, it can win you games, like I said, but it can also be the downfall of you. I do think that Jalen Hurts being in this mode, and the team too, like the team is going to have that vibe of, hey, let's go out there and play for Jalen Hurts. There is going to be that sense of urgency knowing who's taking the snap. So I think that adds value as well. So I do expect it to look better than what you've seen out of Carson, but that doesn't mean necessarily that, oh, well, Doug's scheme is now automatically this genius scheme because it works when someone else is running it. Yes, it might work better, but at the end of the day, is working better than Carson really telling you that this is a great offense? I don't think so.
No, that's a good point. I think we've got to see how this thing plays out, see how it looks, see how much better it really is before we can get a better idea.
I do want to ask you something about Carson and the coaching things.
Sure.
At the line of scrimmage, if he's killing plays and all that, and I know that's part of this, read the defense, see what you see, and then you can change to something else. If it's getting that bad, though, where Carson is now changing out of everything Doug Peterson wants to do, doesn't Doug have the power to say, you know what, I'm just taking that away from you? If it's getting to that degree where Carson's killing all these plays and it's really screwing everything up, isn't it then on Doug to say, I'm not even going to allow you to do that anymore because you're not helping this team out?
To be honest, I think that's why Carson's being benched right now, because and look, I'm not speaking for Doug here. I've thought about that exactly myself. And I'm thinking, this is a large part of who Carson is as a quarterback. His brain has been as advantageous for the team as his arm. And it's almost like the same philosophy where some people have said, if Doug's going to give up play calling, then what's his purpose of even being out there? Because that's what he's really here to do. If you're going to take the autonomy away and make him into a robot quarterback who has to run, then you're probably going to get a similar version of an unhappy, version of Carson Wentz who's not really with it. And at that point, you might as well just bench him, I think is what Doug got to. I don't want to like some undistilled version of Carson Wentz. I either want Carson Wentz or I'm going to have to rebuild him and get another quarterback in, because eventually when you get Carson Wentz back into the offense and rebuild him, you want to be able to have all of those faculties functioning. You don't have to be like baby steps with him along the way. Okay, now we'll give you back your autonomy. I mean, that's a big part of who he is. And I think maybe you would talk about that with like a Jared Goff, who was a robot for his career, or a puppet, if you want to say, to Sean McVay, and then gradually got to do a little bit more. And they're saying he has a little bit more authority in the offense. And if he were to struggle for 5 games, maybe that would go back the other way. But once you went to Carson Wentz and gave him the keys to the entire car, I don't know if putting some safety locks on now is really the way to change him. I think you just got to rebuild him and get his head straight so that you can go back to having the Carson Wentz that you want. But it's a fair point. It's a good point. The weird thing about Jalen Hurts starting, Hunter, is that the Eagles just became the fourth of 4 NFC East teams to be playing multiple starting quarterbacks, right? I think Washington was first, because first it went from Dwayne Haskins to Kyle Allen, now to Alex Smith. And then most recently, Daniel Jones got the hamstring injury, and Colt McCoy. And we know Dak Prescott got hurt, and they were on Ben DiNucci. And then, Andy Dalton, to Ben DiNucci, to Garrett Gilbert or something like that. I mean, there have been like 15 quarterbacks played in the NFC East, but there's no doubt about it, to me, in my mind, that Alex Smith is like the comeback story of the year. The guy had 18 surgeries, right? 18 surgeries.
Tie that together with what Ron Rivera is doing. Is that not incredible? I mean, the guy doesn't miss a damn thing when fighting cancer. How does that happen?
It's unbelievable. It really is amazing. So in a weird, bizarro 2020 NFC East, it was supposed to be the Eagles jockeying it out with Dallas for the title again. And instead, it's Washington, without a name, jockeying it out with the Giants. And it looks like one of those two teams is going to win the division. Now, I've said this before, so I'm going to pat myself on the chest, even though I should not be taking any victory laps, because there's a lot of significant games left to go for Washington and New York. But I did say several times inside the Birds that it was my belief that if at any time during the season that Alex Smith took over as quarterback for Washington, and they were still in it at that point, that they would have a very legitimate shot. Not because I think Alex Smith is Aaron Rodgers, but I knew that defensive front was going to be tremendous, and it is. And I knew that Alex could bring a stability to an offense, and I love Antonio Gibson. I love them at Memphis, and I know how good McLaurin is. And I just, as you mentioned, you just know how good Ron Rivera can be to add stability. So here we are. Alex Smith is the quarterback. The Giants will probably get Daniel Jones back soon. If you're asking me right now who wins this division, I say Washington. I still stick with that, even though the Giants beat them twice. So they technically have the tiebreaker.
I would go Washington as well. Maybe that's something to do with knowing that this quarterback has been in positions before and knowing the head coach. It's not just stability from the head coach, but from the quarterback position as well. And it's interesting you bring up Daniel Jones. Now, he's not back yet, but Josh Hennig and I were talking about this on 97.3 ESPN today, actually. Who is Daniel Jones? And when you look at this franchise with the Giants, he's in that area where he shows you glimpses of, hold on a second, that's nice, but it's not always there. It's not consistent. He's in this weird spot of, he shows you things that you like, but can you really trust in him and say, that's our franchise guy? So I want to ask you, when you look at Daniel Jones, what do you see? Do you see a quarterback that the Giants can happily move along with, or do you see a scenario, which is what's probably going to happen, franchise tag, and they're going to take a while to commit because, you don't want to maybe pull a Carson Wentz?
Well, that's tough. I mean, you're asking me to fast forward to year 5 when we're in year 2. I don't know about the franchise tag yet. I mean, I think he's taken a pretty – I was, look, if you go back to Carson, right? Carson's jump from rookie year to second year was one that you really don't see a whole lot. Daniels has been like he's incrementally better. He still struggled earlier in the year with the turnovers. Now, before he had this hamstring problem and they started winning a few games, his turnovers were down. So that's good. He's making progress. I don't feel like I see a top 5 quarterback yet, though. I feel like I see a quarterback who can win a bad division if he's got like a good defense with him and some weapons. Like, they just showed it to you. Colt McCoy beat the Seattle Seahawks. It wasn't Daniel Jones. But really, it was that the defense, which has played really well this year, well, not really well, but fairly well, really holding that Seattle Seahawks offense down, right? I mean, it was not like either team scored over 20 points. It was a low-scoring game. So would Daniel Jones have scored 30? I don't know. He's shown you flashes. It's weird because I think Washington is best suited for this year to like make a little noise, maybe win the division out of nowhere. Maybe they win a first-round playoff game. I would doubt it. But I do probably like the Giants' future better because Alex Smith is not young. Daniel Jones is, and he can improve. Plus, he'll actually have an off season with the new coaching staff. That's the one thing that's been impressive about the Giants is that teams like the Giants were supposed to be behind the 8 ball because they have a new head coach, a new defensive coordinator, new personnel. They went crazy in free agency, right? There's some Blake Martinez and James Bradbury and all that. And maybe that's why they got off to such a bad
Logan
start.
Ryan as well.
Yeah. Oh, right. Logan Ryan. So they've seemed to have gelled very well. So I think they have a better, they have a good future. Washington may have a better, Washington's got a defense right now, Hunter, that you have to fear for the next 5 to 6 to 7 years. I mean, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, the Chase Young, right? You're going to have to fear them.
Is essentially your rotating piece.
Yeah, I know. And he used to give the Eagles fits, right? So you got to fear them, but you don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. So it's weird because I don't know that the Giants are the team that you're going to have to fear for the next 3 or 4 years because I don't know that I believe in Daniel Jones yet. But if you're looking at it through an Eagles lens right now, you don't even know if your quarterback's ever going to play at a legit level again. So you can't be talking about anybody.
You're right. From an Eagles standpoint, it's hard to look around and like, oh, look at your quarterback. But, in terms of just looking at the division, it's funny, though. There was a time where I looked at Josh Allen and I sort of said, I don't know. I mean, what is he? He's this kid who just runs around. And remember that playoff game? He's getting hit. The ball's flying all over the place. What is this kid? And then This year, I mean, playoff football is a lot different. We saw Lamar Jackson tear up the regular season, and then in postseason play, he fell apart, and the Titans shut him down. So you don't know what's going to happen just because Josh Allen's having a good season this year in the regular season. But you did see a significant jump at some point with Josh Allen when he went from what is he to, hold on a second, this is something fun. This is something I can get behind. So maybe I see a poor man's Josh Allen and Daniel Jones, and 1 year I look at him and it all clicks for the Giants. I don't know.
It's not a bad comparison. That's really not.
Yeah.
And listen, the trade of the year was Stephon Diggs to the Bills. I mean, it really was. That was the I don't know what the word is, but like the icing on the cake for their offseason, man, because that gave Josh Allen a legit weapon. And you're right. He's taken off. I mean, you can probably count him in as if Alex Smith is the comeback player of the year by far, then most improved player. That's an award in the NFL, right? They give one to the most improved player. Sounds
right. They do in other sports. It just doesn't come to my mind, but I'm sure you're
right. I think it is. Josh Allen would win that award.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I'm excited for that Bills team is fun to watch. There's a lot of teams in this league right now outside of like Kansas City and Pittsburgh that, I'm enjoying. Miami's a fun team. I think there's times Vegas is fun, but the last week, what the hell did the Jets do there? How about that whole situation? That looked, you want to talk about, sabotaging and doing things. Come on now with that last play of the game.
Does Greg Williams still think he's getting letters from all these teams from openings after that? Because I'd be a little surprised. I don't find anything fun about the Raiders. No? But I'm a little biased. I just get it. I know that's why everybody loves John Gruden. Like he is like the greatest coach that ever was, especially in Philly. Whenever there's an opening, it's like everybody wants to, write the $100 million check to Gruden that Mark Davis did. And I don't get it. I know he won a Super Bowl, but it's like his career has been a lot of 500 or 1 or 2 games above or under after that.
It's the personality.
I just think that all that stuff is overrated. So give me Andy Reid over John Gruden
over here. Just going, who cares about the fun stuff of the game? Just get to the facts.
Yeah, just get me wins, right?
500 this, 500 that. He's a fun guy to watch and see what's going on. He's got that character. How about that?
I like it. Give me the Super Bowl you want and the Super Bowl you expect.
Okay, what I expect is Chiefs Rams. I think this
You can't be serious.
I'm dead serious.
You like this Rams team,
I like this. I think you look at that division. At one point, we said, it's the toughest. You had Russell Wilson in Seattle, which obviously they're tough, but their defense is weak. You have that Arizona team that's dipping off. The Rams are the most complete team in that division. That's a tough division. I like this Rams squad. I'm telling you.
All right.
I don't think the Saints are going to do it. I think they're going to fall short again. If you tell me, I think it's going to be Chiefs-Rams. I really do.
Chiefs-Rams, huh?
Chiefs,
I just,
Rams.
The Rams are not sexy to me. You're right. They've won some games, but I don't know. I just don't see them in the championship.
This is why
game.
I'm not going like Chiefs Saints or something of that nature. How often does that happen where, you head into it and you think, oh, these are the two best teams. And how often do they actually become the two teams that play? So I'm sort of going against that because I know I've watched so much football that, it's going to be these two teams. And then it never ends up being that way,
Right. All right. So that's the one you expect. What's the one you want?
All right. The one I want is I want to see Green Bay. I want to see Aaron Rodgers in that Super Bowl. And I want to see Pittsburgh. I want to see Big Ben go at it. I would love to see a Big Ben, Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl.
All right. See, we're like right church, wrong pew on that. The Super Bowl I want. I'm also afraid of it because it forces me to like have my rooting interest divided. I want to see Kansas City, Green Bay. First of all, it's cool. That's Super Bowl one, but repeat of it. The second thing is that it's Aaron Rodgers, who's been my favorite quarterback for quite a while, versus Patrick Mahomes. And I just think that is, I always wanted to see Brady versus Rodgers in the Super Bowl. I never got it. I was supposed to get it in 2014, right? When the Packers were beating the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game, but then their third string tight end botched that onside kick, if you remember, and it gave the ball back to Seattle after they had just scored, and they went down and scored another touchdown. So Rodgers doesn't even touch the ball in the final 3 minutes of the game, and all of a sudden a trip to the Super Bowl gets derailed by that dang Russell Wilson, who I enjoy watching as well. But I always wanted to see Brady versus Rodgers. I didn't get it that year. Now I want to see Rodgers versus Mahomes. And I say I'm divided because I really want to see Rodgers win another Super Bowl and play high at the highest level. But I also really like, what Andy Reid's got going on with Mahomes there, and I would love to see them be the next dynasty. So I don't know. It would be, my rooting interest would be divided, but I think it would be an amazing game. And whatever number you're setting on the total, I'm taking the over.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would love to.
Yeah. The Super Bowl I'm expecting, though, it might be that. I know I'm expecting the Rams. I don't think the Steelers and the Bills at the end of the day are going to be able to topple the Chiefs. I don't believe in the Rams. Here's the thing about New Orleans. I could say New Orleans, but for the last 3 years, they've done this. They've won their division. They've been one of the best seeds. And for whatever reason, they stink when it comes to the first or second. I mean, they lost to Minnesota last year, right? And they lost to Minnesota a couple of years ago also. So, and then the Rams. I mean, they lose in the playoffs. And I can't figure out why they can't play better, but their defense is pretty nasty. So I am going to go, all right, I'll do this. The Super Bowl I expect is going to be Saints and Chiefs. But the Super Bowl I really want, I want the Packers and the Chiefs.
That would be fun.
I think America, that's America's Super Bowl right there. That's what every diehard football fan should want to see, Mahomes versus Rodgers. Like, you can't ask for a better matchup than that.
I'm with you. Here's why I went Steelers, though, because I think Pat Mahomes is going to make it for the next 10 years probably. He's going to go on a stretch of making 8 Super Bowls in 10 years. So I want to see Big Ben and Rodgers because, these guys are at the back end. Let's give these two a fighter's chance. I'll see Mahomes. I promise you. I guarantee it. I'll give you my savings account. Not much in there, but you can have it if he's not in the Super Bowl for years to come. He's going to be. So I'll see him. And with the expectations one, what do you expect? I almost don't expect the Rams. That's why I put them in as expecting the Rams, because that's how football works. You just never know with these damn games. I do like them, though. They're my sleeper. They're more of a complete team than people give them credit for.
That's fair. If I were to pick a sleeper, like last year's Titans, to be in a championship game or maybe even in the Super Bowl that you don't expect, I would. Are the Bills? Are they fair? Would you call them a sleeper? I mean, they are I know their record's good, but they're the freaking Buffalo Bills. Did you see the stat? They're the only team this century that hadn't won on Monday Night Football. Century, not decades. not year, not in 20 years, century.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I'll give them as a sleeper, yeah, because you don't look at them and scream AFC Championship game.
Right. No, not at all. Washington a sleeper? No, they're not going to.
Dude,
I don't think so.
Gil brought this up. Because the Vikings are in that last they're in the last spot for the wild card right now, I believe. The second team in the NFC East is one game different than the Vikings. He was like, look at this. Like, it sounds crazy, but the second place team in the NFC East is actually technically in the conversation for the second wild card. It's pretty wild that we're here now.
Well, that means the Eagles are actually still in it, I guess.
Oh,
so.
Stop it. Stop it.
All right, you were talking about expectations, and I can't help but think that for our last topic here, and you brought this up the other day, and you're so right about it. Like 2 years ago, John Middleton raised the level of expectation for the Phillies, not even just wins and losses, but just the expectation of competition and relevance in this city when he went and signed Bryce Harper. It was like the dark cloud for the diehard baseball fans like yourself, like me. I think we're hidden in this city, right? We don't talk about the Phillies enough. Jimmy Rollins was right. The city is fair weathered. I'll go to my grave saying that. It's true. He was being fair and honest when he said we have a lot of fair weathered baseball fans in this city, but you and I are not. And when they signed Bryce Harper, man, it was like you could see that dark cloud dissipate and beautiful sun on the horizon. And you knew you weren't there yet, right? But you were getting there. And now, 2 years later, the same guy is making you see the clouds start to regather over Citizens Bank Park. And I don't get it, man. Didn't you think Middleton was like the Steinbrenner of Philadelphia? Like money was never going to be an issue. And now hearing about these guys maybe getting pawned off and all these layoffs.
It's terrible. I am so jealous of the Mets. It hurts. Imagine saying that statement. That should show John Middleton. I want to send him that clip of me just saying on repeat, I'm jealous of the Mets, because that should hurt. That should be painful to hear that.
Time out. Can I just, because I get what you're saying, but the Mets haven't done anything yet. You don't know if this guy's going to be any good.
Do you see Steve Cohen out there tweeting away? I don't know if it was Bob Nightingale or Jeff Passan. They're talking about McCann going to the Angels or possibly going to the Mets, and he's tweeting back at these MLB reporters like, hey, let me know when he signs. Like, just being fun. This guy is having fun with it. He's going out. He's going to sign these people. I am so concerned. And the John Middleton story, I don't think got enough press that happened over the weekend because of what happened with Carson Wentz. It's unbelievable that this got thrown under the radar because it dropped on Sunday. But Buster Olney reports that high executives around the league that he's talking to are saying that the Philadelphia Phillies are open to trading Zach Wheeler. They just signed Zach Wheeler because of a financial crunch. Then John Middleton says that it's all a lie. When you have Jeff Passan and all these other very respected reporters in baseball all saying that, you know what, we confirm everything. Everything Olney said, we're confirming, we're hearing this. So John Middleton's claiming they're lying. No, they're not lying, John. You're a liar. And I can't believe you're now actually questioning moving on from Zach Wheeler, who you just acquired, and he's your best, he's your most consistent pitcher, let's say. I don't know what you think it would happen if you got rid of him. How do you think that would have been received, Middleton? Do you think we would have been jumping for joy, ready to watch your product play after you pull a fast one on us? There's just no way.
I have so many issues with this. First of all, you're hitting it right on the head. If it's not the Phillies who are coming out saying this, it's other executives, which means they're having conversations with the Phillies and they go to the media and they talk about, that's how it works in every single sport. Saying that these people are lying only makes, as you're saying, Middleton look like a fool. And I'm wondering, does Middleton not realize that that's how most of this reporting works, where the national reporters talk to other teams and they get that information? It makes no sense to me. And, he made this really weird comment. And we talk about Doug losing the press conference a lot or just making up things that don't make sense, right? And he says something like, I wouldn't trade Zach Wheeler for Babe Ruth. And, that which is a total overcompensation quote to begin with, right? Like, oh, these guys are lying and I wouldn't trade him for Babe Ruth. And the nose just starts growing like Pinocchio. But then when you stop and think about it, I at least my first thought was, well, wait a minute. I mean, if you wouldn't trade him for Babe Ruth because Babe Ruth has been dead for, quite a long time, well, duh, nobody would. So what are you trying to say? That's obvious. Or are you saying you wouldn't trade Zach Wheeler for Babe Ruth in his prime? Because if you wouldn't trade Zach Wheeler for Babe Ruth in his time, you need to get out of the building right now and take every single baseball person who might, endorse that with you. That was the dumbest thing that somebody last year it was stupid money. And we were all excited and then eventually let down. This year, it's just stupid quotes, right? I mean, like, I won't trade Zach Wheeler for Babe Ruth.
The way I interpreted it was his prime. So I never really thought about, we're going to trade for a dead guy. That just never popped into my head. But the fact that you make that statement, that's embarrassing. You're telling me you wouldn't trade Zach Wheeler for Babe Ruth? I know this is a silly conversation because obviously he's just throwing it out there. He's trying to prove his point. But that's just a microcosm of the issue here that, you're just stupid and saying things that doesn't make any sense. And I'm starting to get
Maybe
concerned.
He wouldn't trade Reese Hoskins for Ted Williams either.
Oh, geez. Can you imagine that? Oh, man. I'm concerned, and here's why. You're hearing them talk to, they tried to get Theo Epstein. They couldn't get him. They couldn't pry him away. He openly said, I just don't want to be involved with baseball this year, so I can't knock him for that. But they talked to Thad from Minnesota. And you know what? I'm going to stay in Minnesota. They talked to guys out of L.A. And I'm going to stay in L.A. I'm starting to really get concerned that there's people getting interviewed, and they're walking away, going back to their respected places, going, holy shit. Go check out what's happening in Philadelphia. That place is a mess. It's not ironic that all of these high-level executives are walking out of Philadelphia and saying, you know what, I'm going to stay put. We're talking the Philadelphia Phillies. We might rip them, but in the baseball world, that's a big market. And for people to walk away and stay put, it's telling me something.
Like, what happened, man? Like, Pat Gillick said yes, and he was a World Series executive before he came to the Phillies. Why are people looking at this organization and saying, I need to back off this? Because ideally, most guys want to work for an owner that is deep pocketed. Are they now backing off because of what they've seen over the past week and that the layoffs and everything? Or are they just looking at the idea of, and this happened to the Eagles, right? When Jeffrey fired Chip but kept Howie, or even when Jeffrey was kind of changing around the front office structure, but Howie was still there. People were like, wait a minute, am I coming here to be the GM because you still have Howie in the building and you're saying you need a personnel guy, but Howie's there and now I have to work with someone, it's not my operation. Is Andy McPhail's presence and Ned Rice, is it Ned Rice? Yeah, Ned Rice's presence still bothering? Because I was under the assumption that once they bring in whoever, that those guys are like, whoop, 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 bye-bye.
Exactly.
But even Klentak was not fired. He was reassigned. So I don't know. Is it now viewed as a toxic workplace? That would be terrible because right now, the Phillies need somebody to, while Bryce Harper is in his prime and maybe with JT coming back, we'll see. But with some decent talent and two pretty good pitchers, they need somebody to be able to figure out a way to win and develop a farm at the same time. And the longer they go without it, the worse it becomes.
I think they're going to land someone like we look at Theo Epstein and we look at these bigger names that are available. My gut tells me, and this is nothing other than my gut, you might end up with like a Hill, a Michael Hill or something from the Miami Marlins where, it's solid. It's good. It's definitely not bad. But is it Theo Epstein? No, it's not. And I think you're going to end up with something like that, which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't know what I'm going to get at that point. You might get consistency, but it might not be at an elite level. But it's definitely better than a Matt Klentak if you end up with someone like that. And I'm just concerned because you have a hole at catcher. You have a hole at shortstop. I'm done with Roman Quinn, Adam Hazley combination. Reese Hoskins, I don't know what he is. You lose Arrieta, so right now you're rocking Nola and Wheeler, and then you got a hole. Yeah, Eflin, I'm intrigued by, but I'm not satisfied with him being my number 3 guy. Vince Velasquez, the whole bullpen. This team's a mess, and this owner is not willing to spend money. So the fact that 2 years ago there was excitement, I remember the first spring training at bat for Bryce Harper. I was juiced. And even last year, I was juiced up a little bit. This year, heading into the season, we're now back into, This is going to be a miserable season. There's no fun involved with Phillies baseball. Again, that's where we're at. We know we're going to be defeated, and you look at the Braves, you look at the Nationals, you look at the Mets, you look at the Marlins. You're the worst. You're the worst in the NL East, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Well, on that note, that's a good way, I guess, a nice depressing, deflating way to end episode 5 of Motion Brodes.
Yeah, the whole thing was depressing. We went from we're benching our $100 million quarterback, which sucks, into the Phillies are going to suck. So none of this was fun. You know, I love talking to you, but these topics, when's it time to go to the orange and the black?
Pretty soon, right? Then we'll be having lots and lots of discussions about the awesomeness of Carter Hart, because there really won't be anything else good to talk about at that point. But hey, that's Philly sports. We know it. We live it. And we'll do this again next week. This has been episode 5 of Motion Brodes. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Have a great weekend. Talk to you again on the next episode.